Hello and welcome to this math in about a minute video. The topic of this video is going to be the divisibility rules for the numbers 2, 3, 4, and 5. So let's get into it. First of all, why? Well, divisibility rules, they help us break down numbers into what I like to call their building blocks. Alright, and when we're talking about divisibility, we're trying to use either division or multiplication, depending on which way we're going, to kind of break down a number into something smaller. And then that leads to our goal. Ultimately, the goal with these divisibility rules is to make a number a multiplication problem. For example, you want to do something like turn the number 12 into a multiplication problem like 6 times 2, 3 times 4, or 3 times 2 times 2. Now that's the simple example. What's going to happen is we're going to have much larger numbers, and again, we want to be able to break these down into multiplication problems. Because once we do, we can see what it might share with some other numbers, and that's very helpful when we're dealing with fractions. So let's get into the rules. First rule, number 2. Easy enough. The number just has to be even. And so that means it ends with 0, 2, 4, 6, or 8. Easy enough. So something like 128, that's even. If we take something like 125, that's not even because it's not ending with one of those numbers. So we just look at the last digit. And ultimately what this means is that we can then take the number 128, we can divide it by 2, and we're going to get something nice and clean up there. It's going to work out very nice. And then once we have this number up here, we can maybe break that number further if we wanted. So let's move on to the rule for 3. So this one's a little bit tricky. The sum of the digits has to equal a multiple of 3. Let's think about what that means. The sum of the digits have to equal a multiple of 3. Well, let's take a number like 561. 561 is a pretty big number, and I don't know off the top of my head whether or not that is a multiple of 3. But what I can do is I can use this rule to see if it's going to work. And so this is how we do it. You just break each digit down, add them all up. That equals 12, and 12 is a multiple of 3. So I can take 561, divide it by 3, and again, I'm going to get a good, clean, happy answer here. It's going to work out. All right? But then, if I take something else, like let's say 664, and I go 6 plus 6 plus 4, that equals 16. That's not divisible by 3. So I know that would be a waste of time if I were to try to go 664 divided by 3. I'm not going to get a happy answer. And so I shouldn't bother doing it. And again, that's kind of what these rules do, is they let us know how we should start breaking down a number. Should we try 3? Should we try 4? Something like that. Now, speaking of 4, let's look at the rule for it. So this one, the last 2 digits are a multiple of 4. Now, maybe you saw this when we were working with 3, but we're looking at bigger numbers, things that are bigger than 100. And so it's kind of tricky to tell right off the bat if this number is divisible by anything else. So let's take something like 114. 114, if we look at the last 2 digits, 14 is not divisible by 4. So therefore, it's not worth my time to go 114 divided by 4 because I'm going to get a decimal answer. And it's not going to work out well. But if I look at something like, let's say 524, 24 is divisible by 4. That works out well. So again, if I want to, I can now break down 524 by 4, and I'm going to get something good up here in my answer. And then finally, let's look at the rule for the number 5. This one's easy enough. It just has to end in a 5 or a 0. So 335, check, it works. 1,740, check, ends in a 0. All right. And then if we have something like 32, fail. Doesn't work. If we have something like 12,877, fail, doesn't work. And again, that gets back to our rule, our goal. Like, what are we trying to do here? We want to break down numbers into their building blocks. So if we can turn a number into a multiplication problem, that's very useful to see sort of the makeup of it. And these divisibility rules just help us chip away at much larger numbers and break them down into those multiplication problems. So good luck with your homework or practice, and let me know if you have any questions.